Cast your mind back to 2 years ago. It was the summer of 2020. Donald Trump was still in office. Federal agents were being sent into American cities like Portland and Seattle and using war tactics against protesters for racial justice. And I was in this very seat, filling in for Chris Hayes for the first time, when I said we should start talking about the F word, fascism. I've worked around the globe. I've interviewed prime ministers and government officials, dictators, despots, authoritarians. And I think it's time in America that we finally have a proper conversation about the F word. No, not that one. Fascism. I know, it's really controversial. People get very uncomfortable when you mention it. But to borrow a line, if not now, when? And if not us, the free press, then who? For far too long, we have shied away from saying the F word. For a lot of people, calling Donald Trump a fascist was just ad hominem, a lazy political insult. It was the liberal who cried wolf. Look, I get it. Fascism is associated with dictatorships, with mass murder. And we've not had either yet here in the US, thank God. Although, like with every good authoritarian, there is the question of whether President Trump will leave office when the time comes. Of course, Donald Trump tried very hard to remain in office after he lost the election. And if you look at these images from the other day, well, it seems as if things have gotten even worse. On Tuesday, the ex-president hosted the far-right authoritarian leader of Hungary, Viktor Orban, at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. He even found what looks like a fake White House to serve as the background for the photo op. Trump and Orban sat down for this meeting on opposite sides of a long table filled with aides, as if they are both still world leaders at some sort of international summit. Orban arrived in the United States fresh off a widely condemned speech in which he berated Europeans for becoming a, quote, mixed-race society. He claimed that countries who have welcomed migrants from outside of Europe are, quote, no longer nations. They are nothing more than a conglomeration of peoples, adding, quote, we do not want to become peoples of mixed race. This is not new rhetoric from Viktor Orban. For years, liberals have been warning about the danger of this, yes, I would argue, fascist leader, as the American far right has embraced him. Last year, Fox host Tucker Carlson even took his TV show to Hungary for a week of shows fawning over Orban and his policies, which are anti-immigrant, anti-LGBTQ, and anti-freedom of the press. But now it's not just liberals who are condemning Orban. Here is a very recent condemnation of the Hungarian Prime Minister. Quote, I don't know how you didn't notice that you were presenting a pure Nazi text worthy of Goebbels, referring, of course, to Adolf Hitler's chief propagandist, Joseph Goebbels. That did not come from some left-leaning MSNBC host or a Democratic congressman. Those are the words of Viktor Orban's own long-standing advisor, who worked with him for 20 years. She quit over that speech. But can you guess where Viktor Orban is still welcome and even revered? That would be right here in the US of A at the Conservative Political Action Conference taking place in Dallas, Texas. Today, Viktor Orban delivered a speech to CPAC titled How We Fight. It was an adoring crowd.
The globalists can all go to hell. I have come to Texas.
That very diverse crowd at CPAC stood up to give a standing ovation to a fascist. This is what has happened to the conservative movement in this country. And listen to Orban's call to action to all his American fans in Dallas today.
You have midterm elections this year, then presidential and congressional elections in 24, and we will have election in the European Parliament same year. These two locations will define the two fronts in the battle being fought for Western civilization.
Let's be clear. Viktor Orban's definition of Western civilization is white people. Remember, no race mixing. And Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California even went so far as to tweet this, quote, they are applauding a man who denounced mixing races. They might as well be wearing white sheets at this point. Republicans, of course, always claim they are not talking about race. They say they are not racists. But they just use coded language to get around saying the obvious racist words. And now they have no defense for inviting a purveyor of racism and of fascism to their conference in Dallas. They are literally hosting and cheering for a man who gives speeches using Nazi rhetoric. This is truly taking it to a new and dangerous level, normalizing and mainstreaming fascism. But it is coming from the party that is also producing mini-fascists who are cropping up on the state level all over the country. Several of them were on the ballot in Arizona this week, including Blake Masters, the Republican nominee for Senate, and Kari Lake, Republican candidate for governor. They both want to imprison Dr. Fauci, they say, although they never even bother to explain why. Just lock him up. And it only gets wilder from there.
I want to lock somebody down, and it's that liar, Dr. Fauci. It's time to take a sledgehammer to the mainstream media's lies and propaganda. Day one, I take my hand off the Bible, giving the oath of office, and we declare an invasion on our southern border. And then we're going to blow up the drug tunnels. And I don't care if there's a narco-terrorist in there when we do it. This next election, if you're caught cheating when I'm governor, there's not going to be a slap on the wrist. We're going after people.
Kari Lake is one of many Republicans on the ballot this year who also deny the 2020 election results. Mark Finchem, Republican candidate for Secretary of State in Arizona, is an election denier. He's an election denier. So is Christina Caramo, Republican nominee for Secretary of State in Michigan, and Tudor Dixon, Republican nominee for governor of Michigan. There is Eric Schmidt, Missouri's Republican nominee for Senate, Diego Morales, Republican nominee for Secretary of State in Indiana, and Doug Mastriano, the Republican nominee for governor in Pennsylvania, plus Wes Allen, Republican nominee for Secretary of State in Alabama, Adam Laxalt, the Republican nominee for Senate in Nevada, and Jim Marchant, Nevada's Republican nominee for Secretary of State. All election deniers. They don't believe in liberal democracy. And so today, in 2022, I'm sorry to say, the Republican playbook is the Viktor Orban playbook. And you can call that what you want. But I'm going to continue to call it fascism.